So like I said, I wanted to welcome everybody, and it's good to have you from various places all over the world. And I'm about to share the screen. There we go. So I think we are shared now. And what we're going to be talking about is the 5 phases of ethical hacking. As far as I know, there will be a recording of this. It's going to be made available. I was a little bit late on getting on the link. I think somebody talked about this. And the reason I bring that up is because we have quite a lot to cover today. And in doing so, I don't want you to miss anything. And so, let me make sure we're getting sound. I have one person who's not getting sound. Just to double check with our meeting people, are you hearing me okay? Dinesh, are you hearing me okay? Everyone else, just to make sure that
loud and clear, Kevin.
Loud and clear. Okay, very good. So the person who can't hear probably just needs to unmute. All right. So what we're going to talk about is the 5 phases of ethical hacking. Now, this is only an overview. This is not the end-all and be-all of hacking. And we're going to do an overview. We're going to try to get through all phases. We're going to demonstrate a lot. I want to show you some of the tools that we have available for ethical hacking. And and Dinesh, I just want to hear from you real quick. Can you see my slides okay? Just want to make sure, because I have a big KK here. So
yes, yes, Kevin, we're good.
Very good. All right. So just double checking here. Normally I have 2 computers. I'll watch the webinar on one of them, and then to monitor it, and then I will do it from the other. But I'm traveling this week, and so I'm out and about, and it's not easy to monitor as it was before. Let's talk about the state of hacking. The state of hacking. Now, I want you to see that this first slide took place in 2014. So we're starting in 2014, and back in 2014, 58% of large organizations suffered they suffered security breaches. 60% of small businesses, you can see over here, had a security breach. 81% of large organizations had a security breach. 59% of respondents to this particular poll expected that there would be more security incidents in 2015, and guess what? There were. In fact, by 2016, we can see over here in the next slide there, we had 1.3 billion records stolen every day, 157,000 every hour, 2,600 every minute, and every second, 44 records stolen. All right, so this does not even include breaches in general. This is talking about data records stolen, and it goes beyond that. Just today, we see that Russia, India, and other Asian countries are targeted by Chinese hackers, and we see that there's a Ukrainian hacker detained and Russian hacker pleads guilty. If you look in the hacker news, you see that HP is installing telemetry on PCs that you buy. So if you have an HP PC, you just bought it. It might be watching you. It might be watching you. Google detects Android spyware that spies on WhatsApp. So we have Android spyware spying on WhatsApp. We have, in Skype calls, Mac OS High Sierra bug. Yes, your Mac is not as safe as a lot of people claim. Anyone can gain root access without a password for High Sierra. World's biggest botnet just sent 12.5 million emails with the Scar ransomware. So, and these are just the front pages of some of the hacker news sites out there. And recently, Elon Musk, who is of SpaceX. I love watching SpaceX rockets, and he's just recently come out with a giant rocket that's going to take people anywhere in the world in 30 minutes. To me, that's totally cool. But he also runs Tesla, and Elon Musk says that preventing a fleet-wide hack is their top security priority. In an interview this year, Elon Musk said that let's say that all of the Tesla cars got hacked and they all drove to New Jersey, and then all the Tesla cars in the world are now in New Jersey. that would be the end of Tesla. So they do a lot to compartmentalize and to provide users with the ability to cut off any communication from servers. So that's a big priority, because as things get more automated and more automated, hacking becomes a big deal. So what is hacking? It's exploiting vulnerabilities, compromising security, modifying an application or features to achieve a goal outside the creator's original purpose. This is where you get the idea of hacks, life hacks, you know, use a newspaper to sweep your porch or whatever, you know, something that is not normally necessarily used for one purpose can be used for another purpose. And the same thing applies to computers. But that same skill can be used to steal, pilfer, and redistribute intellectual property, leading to billions and eventually trillions of dollars in business loss. But I like these definitions a little bit better. So hacking is gaining access, wanted or unwanted, viewing, copying, creating data, leaving a trace without the intention of destroying data or maliciously harming the computer. You know, if your friend says, hey, I can't get access to this file or this app on my phone or on my tablet or on my computer, and you say, hey, let me help you out with that, and you do it, you just hacked. I've helped many people get into their Windows 7. Yeah, you'll see this on the CEH. This is a lot of this is derived from the CEH courseware, but not all of it. I've added a lot of my own stuff to this particular deck. And so the good guys are what we are talking about when we talk about ethical hacking. Right, and so the bad guys is what we call cracking. Cracking is breaking into a system without permission. It's the opposite of hacking. Hacking and hackers are commonly mistaken to be the bad guys most of the time. Crackers are the ones who screw things over as far as creating viruses, cracks, spyware, and destroying data. Now, these three definitions I got from the internet's #1 source for technical definitions. Yes, that's right, the Urban Dictionary. Okay, so maybe it's not the #1 source, but it is a source, and it depends on who you are. I don't necessarily recommend going there, but it had some good definitions for hacking there. So a hacker is an intelligent person with excellent computer skills. They do it as a hobby, or they do it to gain knowledge, but there are others who try to do illegal things and succeed in doing illegal campaigns with hacking, and that is not what we train people to do. We train people in ethical hacking. Ethical hacking involves the use of tools, tricks, and techniques to identify those vulnerabilities, identify the exploits, and guess what? We guard against it and make sure that an unethical hacker cannot break in. So to beat a hacker, you need to think like one. It allows you to counter attacks from hackers. So reasons why organizations recruit hackers? Well, to prevent hackers from gaining access, uncover vulnerabilities, to analyze and strengthen the security posture. Do you know that it takes, on average, how many days do you think it takes on average for an organization to discover that they have been breached? Post them in chat. How many days? Put it in chat. How many days do you think it takes an organization on average to discover that their organization has been breached? It has been hacked. What do you think? Well, we have some people saying 30 days. Some people say more than that, 30 days, right? Some people say 60. Some people say 10 days. Oh, look, I have someone saying it's 1 year. 1 year, and I tell you what, you are closer to the truth. 3 months, right? It takes an average of over 200 days. So it's about 205, 207 days. So it's over 200 days on average before an organization discovers that they have been breached, meaning that for that entire time that they have had the hacker in their system running amok, cracking into files, selling things on the dark net, etc. And so there are great reasons for us to be able to detect that. Remember, that 200 days is a mean, an average. That means that if you look at a standard distribution, that there are some organizations that have had hackers in their organization doing whatever they want for the last 10 years and have never noticed, and others who find it in an hour. But most, it's about 200 days. So what ethical hackers are here to do is find out what we can do to guard that system with reconnaissance. What we can do to prove that a hacker has less of a possibility of gaining access to the system, right? We want to make sure that we protect that data in the system, patch those systems, and also even quantify the time and money and effort required for the protection that our organization is looking for. And are there security measures? Are they compliant with legal and industry standards? That's what ethical hackers do. Now, a lot of people, when we talk about hacking and then say, hey, I'm learning hacking, somebody will say, wait a minute, isn't learning hacking, isn't that illegal? No, it's not illegal. Think about this. We send our kids to karate, right? We want them to learn that if a bully comes, they can defend themselves. We go off and we take kung fu, right? We learn a stance and we learn to punch, we learn to block. You know, we're not just learning to block when we're taking karate or kung fu or MMA. We're learning to punch. We're learning to kick. We learn all sorts of self-defense. Why? Not because we want to attack anybody, but because we want to understand what it is. So if you're walking in the park and somebody comes up to you and you have great self-defense skills, you turn around, pull a stance with your fists out, and the person looks at you like, wow, this person knows what they're doing. I think I'll go after someone else. Now that's the way to be. But if you cower in fear or don't know what to do, well, then you're more of a potential victim. And that is how your company looks when you don't want, when your company looks when it doesn't have that stance. So we want to give our companies that defensive posture by training in hacking, which is why we train hackers. Absolutely. That's what we do to make sure that you have what is necessary to defend yourself and not be bullied, not be stolen, ripped off, taken down, have lethal business activity against your organization. Rather, we train to hack. And the hacking field for us is going to be a white hat hacker. And there are several different questions coming in, and we're going to be answering questions mostly at the end. But I will answer one question that I saw pop up that to me is extremely important to answer, which was how well does it pay? And we're going to get to the 5 phases as we go through this, and I will back up in just a moment and give you the overview, and then we will get back to the 5 phases. But I want you to know that this field pays tremendously well. This field is a very well-paying field, and not only that, but it is extremely needed in organizations. And since it's so needed, it pays well. So yes, one of the things to keep in mind, though, as we'll see as we get into some of the technologies, that it's going to be very important to make sure that you actually have a huge set of skills before you take that first CEH class. And either way, what you're going to do is you're going to be learning how to hack. The first type of hacker out there is called a black hat hacker. And what that is an individual with those extraordinary computer skills, with those extraordinary computer skills, but they use it for evil. A white hat hacker, somebody like you or me that has those professional skills, but we use it as security consulting. I hear a clearing throat. If someone wants to make a comment, go ahead and do it. Next is gray hat. So this is somebody who would work and during the day as a security consultant, but at night they would be hacking. Suicide hackers and script kiddies and cyber terrorists and state-sponsored hackers and hacktivists. You can read all these definitions. There are various types of hackers. Now, to restate the 5 phases of ethical hacking, the first one is reconnaissance. After that would be scanning. And then after scanning will be gaining access. So reconnaissance, scanning, gaining access, maintaining access, and then covering your tracks. So RCGMC, reconnaissance, RSGMC, reconnaissance, scanning, gaining access, maintaining access, and covering tracks. And we're going to try to get through some of those today. We won't get through all of them, but we'll get through a few of them. The first one is reconnaissance. Remember, after that is scanning. After that is gaining access, then maintaining access, and then covering your tracks. And the reason I mentioned those so many times is because there are some of you who are taking notes. I want to make sure you have that down. So for reconnaissance, this is where we gather information. One of the first phases of reconnaissance is dumpster diving. I don't know if you've heard of dumpster diving, but people throw away very interesting things. What might you find in the dumpster of an organization? Well, one thing you might find is old passwords, right? These are passwords that have been used before, giving us the pattern for passwords, and we have names of people. For instance, the names of all the principals. So, for instance, if I find that the name of the system administrator is Tony Montano, right, then I could say, right on, I'm going to be able to masquerade as Tony Montano when I want to get stuff done. I can find out information. So I do that by passively gaining that information, right, without directly interacting with the target, and then even in the late phases, doing active reconnaissance, making a call to the help desk, technical department, seeing how things are run with the organization. Right, so again, if for those of you, here are the 5 phases again, right, of ethical hacking. We are now in reconnaissance, getting that information, finding out what's going on, and then we go from there as a part of reconnaissance, which is footprinting. And I'm sorry, I went ahead too many slides there. Footprinting is a process of collecting as much data. We want to know their security posture. We want to reduce the focus area. If we find out that there are specific IP addresses at play here, then we can make use of those IP addresses and not all the others. For instance, rather than having to scan 65,000 IP addresses, if I just know 2 or 3, then that's great. Or 1 domain, that makes things much better. Identify vulnerabilities. I can scan ports, find out which ports are open. I can do banner grabs and find information on what is behind those ports and how they're working, then draw a network map, and now I know how the entire network works, how it looks. I may even, at this time, have switches and routers, IP addresses and subnets. I might have a specific security protocols, maybe even dark areas behind which I was not able to gain information. And so we want to grab all that information. If you look here, we see a variety of information that we want to gather from the network to the systems to the organization's information. Don't have time to go through each one of these like I would in a normal class, but there are quite a lot. And some of the more important ones, for instance, are TCP and UDP services that are running, right? ACLs that are running. If I can find passwords and systems names and users and groups, if I can get employee details, If I can even go get news articles and press releases over time that give me the footprint of that company. So I will go through search engines, using social networks and sites and website footprinting, email, Whois, DNS. You know, one of the coolest tools out there is our search engines. From Wikipedia to Google, lots of information can be extracted about the target just from going through search engines. Through Bing, through Google, you can search sites, and let's just have a look at some of what you can do with a search engine. So, for instance, I am going to look at, let's say that there's a director of a company or a person, and I want to know how fast they might be able to respond to a security incident in terms of actually getting on site. And I find that this is where they're located, right? So I can do a Google search and get a map search and actually look at, you've done this before, haven't you? Yeah, me too. You can look at anyone's specific house. Look at that. There's the hacker shack right there. We have the hacker shack with the hacker truck. No, actually, I have no idea where this is in Kevin, Montana. This is one of 2 cities in the world that have my first name, Kevin. So, okay, no, here it is. That's better. That's a nice, bigger house, right? This is the hacker domicile. I'm not sure where it is, but either way, you can grab information, right? If I have an employee of a company and I want to find out information about them, I can type in information about them, put their name in quotes in Google. But you have to use the quotes because in Google, the quotes mean to use this exactly, right? So I put that in quotes, and I put some piece of information about them. Like, for instance, I put in CCNA because I know this person has a CCNA. And I do this, by the way, I do this when we're onboarding employees. I can get an entire public profile of an employee just by simply doing a search like this, right? And I'm getting a mic. Somebody's mic is turned on, and I hear background noise. Just FYI. And so this gives me. I can see this guy. Look, Kansas City, Missouri, 10 years, CCNA, NP, routing, switching, etc. Right? And then if I wanted to, I can type in this. Watch. I could do Kansas City, Missouri. Right now, I can localize my search and get white page entries and find Spokio information, more LinkedIn pro. This guy may have multiple profiles. I don't know, right? And then I can go to Facebook and find information on the person, right? So if I wanted to impersonate somebody, I would have everything I need to take that person and impersonate them, or to even grab their passwords. Now, this has happened to several political candidates, and what has happened is they go to Facebook or some other location, and they are able to find the person's mother's maiden name, their name of their pet, their school where they grew up in for grade school or whatever, and then answer the security questions for their email, and then gain access to their email, and then it gets published online. Have you heard of that before? Political candidates who will get their emails splashed online, and that's how they do it. And by the way, 2 things about that. Let's stay on public and restricted websites. 2 things about that. Number one, the number one thing is when you answer those security questions, when you set up an account, those are passwords. Those are passwords. So if your mother's maiden name is, I don't know, give me a maiden name. Your mother's maiden name is, let's just say my last name, King, right? So, oh, okay, Sujata. All right, so if your mother's maiden name is Sujata, what do? Do you put that in all of those forms? No, you make up a name, make up a password, and use that, right? You don't use that. You use a fake name because this is a password. What was your first pet? Was my first pet named Kraken? Well, if that was really my first pet's name, then I will use Vesuvius as my pet's name all the time. Whenever I see a form, I use Vesuvius because nobody will go and look up my Facebook profile, my LinkedIn profile, my Spokio profile, and come up with the information, because all the information in there that I use is completely fallacious. It's not true. They're all passwords, so don't fall prey to that. And right now, in fact, I would suggest coming up with a list of those names to fill in for those types of sites. Keep it remembered, though. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble when you try to get back into your email. Determining operating systems. I can find out what operating system that a organization is using and find the version of the operating system and hack it based upon the operating system. I can use Google Maps, the Wikimapia and National Geographic and Yahoo Maps and Bing Maps, and get information on the layout of organizations, buildings, locations through time. Go back in time on Google Earth. I can go back in time and see how things have changed. Again, like we're talking about with people, LinkedIn, different services for social media, business social media, private social media, you can find out a lot of information about people. From Veromi to Intellis to 411 People Search, public background check for just $25, you can find out almost everything about almost anyone. And if you have the time, you can do it free by going to multiple services and going to social media, etc. So with that, and financial services and job sites and using alerts so that if anything changes with Yahoo or Google or Giga Alert, you'll get a little message that says that information has changed. From Google Groups, you can get so much information by even putting together advanced Google hacking techniques like query strings and Google operators. And one thing I will show you is the Google operator. This is one of my favorite ways of footprinting and getting information about sites and so on. So let's just jump on into here. We'll go back to there, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out information on the command prompt, but I am going to put it in the site colon Microsoft.com, right? And so now, if you look at every single hit is from Microsoft.com. So I'm searching from within there. Now, if I want, I can even, this gives me how many hits? Let me see, I have 497,000 results. But now I'm going to look for that specific phrase by using quotes. Right? Now I have 485,000 hits. And I can find that in Microsoft.com and only in Microsoft.com. So if I wanted to, let's go into a new site. Let's go into Cisco.com. And we'll search for that, and you see I have 16,400 results about the command prompt in Cisco.com. Every one of these references comes from that site, right? So if I wanted to search in a specific company for a specific string, I can use Google Advanced Search Operators. I suggest looking into these and trying them. You saw how I used it. I would suggest learning to use that. And again, social networking sites from Twitter, Pinterest, Google+. You can look up any user, anybody in a company, and find out information on any of these sites, what the users do, what the organization does, and the attacker gets that information. Website footprinting is easy to find. You go to the specific website and you can dump information. One of my favorite tools along that vein is called Firebug. Make a note of that. It's a plugin that you can use for Firefox and Google Chrome that allows you to grab all kinds of detailed information about what is in that site. But there are many other tools like Informer that will allow you to do the same thing. You can examine cookies on sites, which can lead to impersonation, cookie snarfing, and others. You can actually take the entire site and mirror it. Have you ever mirrored a website? Have you ever downloaded an entire site? Give me some chat if you have. Downloaded an entire site and then maybe taken it with you somewhere? Yeah, me too. I've done that. It allows you to take your time and examine that site. And others have used things like that to impersonate those sites. So it's not a good thing to be able to have your site so easily cloned, but it's also more difficult because anytime you go to a website, you are actually downloading that site, that page, excuse me, to your local computer. You're downloading it. HTTP printing, Black Widow Page Nest, the GNU widget, and Teleport Pro. Yeah, there are a lot of very good tools out there to copy that content. Some of them are free, some you have to pay for. But yeah, you can clone those websites. And okay, give me some chat. How many of you, yes or no, have you gone to the Wayback Machine? Yes or no? Everybody, have you gone to the Wayback Machine? If you haven't gone to the Wayback Machine, I suggest going to the Wayback Machine. And for instance, I would do that today, but we were really low on time, is look at Microsoft's site, for instance, Microsoft.com, and you go down to, let's say, 2000 or 1996 for Microsoft.com, as you see here, and you'll see the super old. Yeah, for Facebook or others, you find the site. I've seen old sites that I have had way back in the past and no longer have that are still archived in there. And you can use that to gain information about companies that you use for footprinting purposes. Monitoring websites using Website Watcher. And then we get to the next level of ethical hacking, which is scanning. But before we do that, let me show you one of the tools that we use to learn ethical hacking. And this is an ethical hacking lab. I'm going to resume it here. And here's one of the questions I have for you. If you want to practice hacking and you download a series of hacking tools, what is one of the problems with that? Well, number one, your antivirus software will go crazy and it will try to delete those tools. Number two, you might get fired from your company for having hacking tools. Right? Number three, you might get arrested for trying out your skills on an unsuspecting company. So it's much better to be able to actually have your own lab. Now, there are many different ways to create your own labs using virtualization, but when we teach certified ethical hacking, we use a lab that looks like this. And so it guides you along so that you can log in. For instance, I'm going to go ahead and hit the Control-Alt-Delete, and I'm going to paste in the password and log in right here, right? And then I have server 2012 R2. I want you to see something else too. Check it out over here. Machines, I have a Windows Server 2012, 08, Windows 8.1, Windows 7, Kali Linux, Ubuntu, an Android machine. I have NAT set up to do some routing. So I have lots of stuff to hack. And it's a guided exercise. I'm going to go ahead and close Server Manager here. And then you'll see here what we're going to do next is we're going to launch this Firefox browser. And then there is a website that has been created for us to hack. And this one is called, we're not really hacking it, we're just doing footprinting right now. So we go into www.moviescope, right, .com. And there it is. Well, not quite. There it is, right? So this is a site that lives in this environment only. and we can use it to find information about this site. Right, so if I go over here to the navigation toolbar here and I go to Firebug, and there it is. And here I can get information about the CSS layout of the site. Actually, before I do that, let me go over here and just look at some of the actual setup of the site. Right, if there's any bad coding for this site, we'll be able to pull out some of that just by looking into the each of the sections of the site. So I can look at the margins, the padding, the borders. I can look at the outline, look at the layout of the site. All right, I can go to the style sheets and look at those. All right, go here to the console. I'm going to enable Firebug. But either way, what I would do is I would be able to find information out. In fact, what I can do, which is really cool, is I can log into the site. As you notice, it's not using HTTPS. Therefore, I'll be able to capture the login into the site using Firebug. Right? There's more exercises like using the web extractor and using network analyzer. Right? So, for instance, here we have to install Path Analyzer Pro. And I want to show you something here before we go into the install, which I probably won't have time to do because we're running out of time already. But what I am going to do is I'm going to go over here. I want to show you something here. It's what I call a treasure trove. In these labs, and only in these labs, we have a really cool folder called CEH Tools. Check it out. Watch this. Watch this. Check it out. I'm going to open it up, and voila! The angels are singing. Look at that. Footprinting and reconnaissance, scanning, network enumeration, system hacking, malware threat, sniffing, social engineering, session hijacking, SQL injection. I go in SQL injection, and I find a blind and detection and injection tools and so on. So if we go into any one of these tools, we'll find various ways of doing this. Here's email tracking tools underneath Reconnaissance from Email Tracker Pro, which is one of the ones that is really nice. I can install it if I want. And so within the auspices of these labs, there are literally scores of tools that we learn about and learn to use. And then guess what? You take this with you to your company, and you're able then to use them to secure your company against people who are using them against you. All right. So, I'm going to give you just a brief look into scanning, and then we'll have to pipe down here because we're running out of time. Hacking takes time. It takes a lot of time to hack. The 5 phases of ethical hacking that we see here on the left are not based upon the hacker. These are based upon what, it's from the perspective of the hacker. I guess that's what you're saying. From the perspective of the hacker, and from the perspective of me, the white hat hacker, the security consultant, what I'm going to do to test the network of my, whoever I'm working for is these, and that is what a black hat hacker, an attacker, someone's trying to crack into my network, would also use these against me. So both I use these to help test my network, and an attacker uses this to help to try to breach my network. Okay, so this is just a path that you have to go through in order to gain access to resources in a network. So, depending on what information you already have, you will do some or none, or not. There's never none. Some or and maybe a slightly different order. You might do it like, for instance, if you do a quick scan and you realize, oh wow, there is a very quick way to get in here. I might just gain access right away, and then get what I'm looking for and not maintain my access. Just get out of there, and I may not even clear my tracks. Why? Well, because I have what I want, and I'm pretty anonymized on the way in, or I might delete logs on the way out. So yes, these can be used very flexibly And as you will see, there are so many different tools that can be used, from sniffing to port scanning to MAC flooding, DHCP attacks, to using your switches and routers and sniffing in various different ways. This is one of the places where I wanted to get before we end today, to let you know that hacking requires a great understanding of what a packet is. What are the layers of any operating system and network, application, transport, presentation, etc., the OSI model. And that's one of the things that we teach. Also, in your places of work, you might get to use protocol analyzers. Some of these things, like these fluke meters, etc., are extremely expensive devices that usually only the most professional security professionals use, and large organizations. You can use wiretapping. You can use many different ways of doing things. In fact, the NSA, one of the biggest, I would argue, the biggest wiretapper, packet grabber, and hacker on the face of this small planet. And in fact, some of their tools for doing just that have been stolen. We've had major data breaches with the NSA themselves by just one unscrupulous person. All right. So from scanning, we have gaining access, which we don't really have time to go into, where you use various tools to gain access. And from gaining access, we go through all the other phases, maintaining that access, and then clearing tracks. And with clearing tracks, that is extremely important for both the security professional to understand how that works, so we can look for signs of that. And then not just the security professional, but the hacker is trying to clear their tracks by deleting, disabling, auditing, getting rid of log files, closing ports, etc. Now, there was a time when people did not understand why we would train in hacking, in ethical hacking, because it seemed like an oxymoron. I think we all know now that that is not an oxymoron, because in order to be able to protect your systems, you have to understand how those types of attacks work. IoT, quantum computing, AI, ubiquitous computing, networks, desktops, phones, tablets, and devices that you cannot even imagine are coming, and you are one of the first lines to guard against them being attacked and subverted. So that is why we train hackers. Now, I would suggest everyone in this webinar get hacker training so that you can learn to defend your devices and your networks. And for the sake of time, I think that's all we have for today. All right. Do we have our moderators?
Sorry about that. I had to find my mute button.
The button.
Yeah, the button. Because you're so busy opening up panels and looking at different questions going by.
Yes.
Hopefully, because we did start about 5 minutes late, so I'm hoping we can go just a little bit over.
Okay.
Just some, one of the questions that always comes in, and I've already seen a couple hidden back there.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is starting their career out, and I mean, most people, we start our careers out, I'm going way back when, like you, I'm also from Albuquerque area, so I went to UNM.
Cool. Right.
Yeah. But one of the things, you know, we kind of throw a dart at the board and say, well, where do I start? Well, that looks cool. You know, let's learn hacking. Okay, I've got a little skill in it. What would you suggest for these people who are just starting out their career for certification and education and experience to get in and dive into this particular domain?
Well, the biggest way to the place to start, there are two areas that are important in hacking, and one of them is, well, let's just make it three. There's networking, there's computing, and there's programming. Those are the three legs that we stand on. So when I talk about networking, we need to be able to define the answer to the question, what is a network? What is a network? How does a network work? How does it function? Think about it this way. Somebody who's in the hacker field, the computer security field, needs to have a fundamental understanding of what happens when they click on an item in a website. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that when I click on that item in the website, how does that get turned into a packet? How does that packet get put on the wire? How does that packet get through my wireless or my wired connection? How is it handled at the wireless router? How is it handled at the switch? How is it transmitted from the wireless router to a physical router? And then how is that routed from one network to another? And then how does it that packet flow on the network? How is it treated from router to router? Knowing that networking is extremely important. Now, the next thing is computing in general. What's a CPU? What's memory? What's the difference between RAM and ROM? And how do clock cycles work in a CPU? What are, what's a PID? Those types of things in a computer are important. And then lastly, and it's more important when you get to the upper levels of computer security, but programming, because once I get a very good tool, I might want to write a script for that tool, or I might want to create my own script. So where do you start? You start with something like one of our classes that train in basic core elements of computing. If not, you can do a CCNA or something like that, or even an MCSE from or something like that would be very helpful for gaining those basic networking skills. And then you can move into hacking already having understood. In fact, if you have a CCNA, really you are a hacker. You just haven't started using the tools yet. So you have to get into basic networking understanding and gain facility with using and working your way through networks. So something like that.
Excellent. And I'm going to make just a quick note for those people who I had some questions on, like, can we get back to some other information or this screen or that screen? These sessions are recorded, so if you want to request a copy of the recording, you can go to Simplilearn.com and just let either the chat window come up and let them know you were here, and they'll send you a link for that.
Yes, and I will also post the slides on a I have a presentation site, and so if I get emails passed on to me from you guys, from any one of you, if you pass on an email to me, I'll give a link to that site for slides.
Okay, excellent. You'll have to talk to the people back at Simplilearn, like you.
Yeah.
I'm also remoted in.
Yes.
And let's if we can, let's go one more question, which is, I think, it's one of those weird questions that I see a lot. Artificial intelligence. How do you see that as being both a good or bad aspect specific to, since we're talking about hacking in the hacking industry and how that would affect it?
Okay, that's an extremely important question. First of all, I'm going to just do a quick definition of what artificial intelligence is. And artificial intelligence is the ability to mimic what a human does using a computer. Basically, that's what it is. Now, most AI that we have these days, and for the very near-term foreseeable future, are going to be specifically targeted AI. So, for instance, you might have an AI right now. We have Watson, and Watson is great at reading books or reading websites and providing information like to doctors, or playing if you look up Watson and look up Jeopardy, you'll see Watson that can actually play Jeopardy too, right? But if you say, hey Watson, how are you feeling today? Watson will have no idea what you're talking about. It's not a general purpose AI. So for the foreseeable future, AIs will be targeted in a specific field or task, and they'll be very good and very fast at it because they'll be able to do processes that take a human days, years, or weeks in milliseconds. And so what will happen eventually, what I foresee, is that there are going to be hack AIs. I've never heard this talked about, but there will be hack AIs. These are AIs that are built specifically to hack. So that, for instance, I can say, hey, AI, here's an IP address, attack it. And it would do everything I would do over a period of 5 months. It could do it in a day, right? And then return the results to me. How do you guard against something like a hack AI? Well, in the exact same way that you guard from any other advanced hacker. And that's what you learn in these types of classes. And then the next thing, I just want to say very quickly, 2 more things. You also will have defense AIs. And so knowing how to configure and how to configure yourself for your defense posture on a computer system will help you be able to work with defense AIs in the future. So you'll buy devices or subscribe to services that are artificially intelligent. Lastly, on AIs is the AI that Elon Musk talks about, Bill Gates talks about, and others is the general purpose AI, which will be coming your way within the next 30 years, maybe 20 years, depending on Ray Kurzweil and others. The general purpose AI will be a human level general intelligence, just like each one of you are, a human level general intelligence, but it'll run 1 trillion times faster than you can run, and it'll also be able to duplicate itself. And that's when we're in big trouble. But you don't have to worry about that yet because we don't have one coming for a while. And meanwhile, it is important for us to understand all of the aspects of computing and computer security so that we can guard against and make use of AIs in the near-term and long-term future.
Excellent. That was a good one. Yeah, we're not worried yet, but we're getting there.
Yes. Very good summary.
Yes. I don't know if we can just work in one more quick question on here.
Anytime, yes.
This will
plenty
be
of time.
A short one. Let me go down. Where was it? In the CEH, getting the certification and going through that, are people going to be required to do scripting or no scripting? And if so, what language or what setup would they want to be a little knowledgeable in?
In the CEH, we do all our programming in binary. Oh, I'm just kidding. No. The CEH, even though it requires a fair amount of knowledge to do well in the CEH, what we do is we show you tools that you're going to be using to guard against and understand attacks and so on. So no, you will not need to know scripting before getting your CEH. It's mainly networking and computer knowledge. So yeah, so no worries about that.
Oh, there we go. I'm still unmuted. Okay. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. And that's true. Yeah. That's always important to know what you're getting into when you're diving into a new class, whether you have scripting or no scripting needed.
Yes.
Certainly, I come from the programming side, so certainly my experience is that any scripting you have as you go forward will have aspects that spill into, you'll be able to combine them later on as you develop your skills. Yeah,
any programming or scripting that you have is always valuable, and it will give you a leg up. And I just want to make a quick comment, too, because I've seen a lot of questions. I'm actually pacing back and forth, and I periodically glance at the screen. I've seen how hard is the exam? How difficult is it to do the exam? It is not an easy exam. Let's put it that way. And so it's very important for you to have a very good handle on the major tools and techniques of ethical hacking in order to do the exam. Like for instance, that lab I was just showing you, if you're able to, that's why we provide these labs, so that students will be able to practice all of the techniques in all of the labs that we teach. You should learn enough to be able to do them without being directed. So for instance, if I told you to use Nmap for a specific purpose, that you'd be able to do it. If I told you to use a interpreter shell to find this information, you would be able to use an interpreter shell. If I told you to scan the network and find this particular information, or what if I told you to craft a packet? What tool would you use and how would you do it? What is packet crafting? So those are the types of things that you would learn in a CEH class. And by doing that, hands-on is of extreme importance.
Excellent. I think that puts us a little bit over, which is great because we did start a little late. Again, a reminder to everybody that you can go to Simplilearn.com, and if you go into the support and send a note or talk to the chat window, they can send you more information. And a lot of times they go through these questions and also send out emails if we miss something.
Yeah, Simplilearn is great, so I would definitely suggest that.
Excellent. And also, if you have questions for Kevin here, they can forward them to him. So let them know on there also.
Yes.
With that, we'll go ahead and close the webinar. I want to thank everybody for being here. Again, Kevin, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. I did. I always have fun with these. I learned so much.
They're fun.
An old dog learning new tricks. That's what I always tell people.
Yes.
And then I know we have Danish in the back, so thank him for joining us also. I don't know if he's still over there.
Hi, Chair. It was an absolute pleasure. I think this was a very informative session. The only challenge with us doing an ethical hacking overview session is always time, because it's such a wide and vast topic and it's very difficult to crunch information. But we will have resources circulating to the attendees and anyone who wants to know more through Simplilearn, whether it's recordings of webinars, whether it's white papers, whether it's video resources. There's a plethora of resources that EC Council and Simplilearn collaboration has put together for people who want to know more information about. Some of the questions that I saw was like, what are the courses they can opt for before CEH? How difficult is the exam? How's the exam based off, practical or theoretical? All of those FAQs are going to be available through Simplilearn's landing page, or any resource, any questions that you guys have that's not there. Always feel free to reach out to Simplilearn, and Simplilearn EC Council will make sure they get addressed. I just wanted to put it out there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great.
Excellent. And look forward to seeing you guys in our classrooms. Happy learning and a good evening or morning, afternoon, depending on where you're at. And everybody have a great day.